Hi, welcome to the DRH show, where I have wide-ranging conversations with fascinating people. We talk about all things psychology, mental health, and wellness. Today, I'm joined by a naturopathic herbalist and a holistic life coach, Mayin Vega. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Well,
Nice
it's
to
great
be
to
here.
have you here, Mayin. Let's kick this off by you telling us your background, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Okay, well, my background is that I was formerly a computer scientist slash engineer at the NASA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field, California. And then I got married and I had children. And then we faced a lot of different problems and difficulties with the modern medical model. And it basically just kept failing us, when we were seeking answers for our various health issues as a family. And probably the climax of that was when I had some really terrible migraine issues. And it was the first time I ever remembered even having a headache in my life. And I thought I was going to die. I thought I had, maybe there was something wrong inside my head because the pain was so severe. And I had already had like two children by that time. And I would say that the experience that I was feeling with my migraine at that time was worse than childbirth. It was the worst pain I had ever felt. And it was in my head. So it was very concerning. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse as the days went by. So finally, I asked my husband to take me to the emergency room, and it was the middle of the night, so we had to drag our two babies at that time, and we took them to the emergency room, and we waited for a long time. It's just how emergency rooms go, and we spent probably 8 hours total. Now the first round of people that helped me, they asked questions and took some tests and weighed me and whatnot. And then they're like, we can't really find anything wrong with you. We're going to have you talk to the doctor. So finally, I talked to a doctor, but I think before that, I was talking to a nurse. And then the doctor said, we can't find anything wrong with you, but we want to maybe rule out the possibility of a tumor by giving you a CT scan. She said, but insurance doesn't cover that, so you would have to pay this out of pocket. So I said, okay, well, how much will this cost? Because I need answers because I thought I was going to die. And she said that it would cost. She said that she thought it would cost $2,000. Well, I ended up spending $4,000 that night. But I figured, I need to know. I think I'm dying, and she thought, well, maybe you have a tumor, so maybe I was dying. So I went and got the CT scan. I waited some more, and the doctor called me again. And I talked to her that night for about, a total of 15 minutes. And after the CT scan, she said, well, good news. The CT scan found nothing, which means there's nothing wrong with you. You just have a really bad headache. And they gave me some, strong painkillers, which, didn't work, but that's all I had. And so I was furious. I was livid. And I was like, I spent $4,000 that night. And how much did that machine cost, that CT scan machine? Thousands of dollars for that, to install that technology into the hospital. And then the doctor there, she probably spent $150,000 to $400,000 on her medical degree, right? And not to mention, the degrees of all the people that were working in the hospital, the nurses and staff there. And all they could tell me is that there's nothing wrong with you. The system's broken. There's something seriously wrong here. If I'm going in here and they can't find anything wrong with me. And that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And from that night on, that wasn't the only bad experience we had with modern medicine, but that was the last, basically. And from that point forward, I decided, I'm going to take charge of my own health. And that's when I began studying nutrition and herbalism, naturopathy, orthomolecular nutrition, eventually also life coaching and health coaching.
Thank you for sharing to us your health journey. I could totally understand your frustration, even though I live in a country where there's free public healthcare. But before living in Britain, I live in Southeast Asia, where just like you, if I have something, if I have illness, I also have to spend a lot of money. And eventually, just like what you shared, they'll tell you that nothing is wrong, you're perfectly healthy, but you spend a lot of money. It's really frustrating. And Yeah, just like what you've told us, it led you to discover the benefits of naturopathy. And I apologize if I don't get the name right. But just for the benefit of the uninitiated, including myself, what exactly is naturopathy, and what do you do as a naturopathic herbalist?
Right. Okay. So there's two words in that term. Right? There's naturopathic and there's herbalism. And so I'll talk about the first word first. Herbalism. Herbalism is basically the ancient art of healing. There's Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. There's Ayurveda, and there's different the ancient healing arts before we had pharmaceutical drugs and medical doctors. The healers were herbalists, right? Whether they were shamans or whatever. They were herbalists, meaning they used the things in nature to heal people that were sick. They used the plants, they used, other natural things as well. But, the medicines were herbs, were plants. And it doesn't matter, when people think herbalism, they think, oh, a tea. But, there's other forms. You can use any form, you can use any part of the plant and it's still part of herbalism. You can use the bark, you can use the roots, you can use the leaves, you can use the flowers, you can use the seeds. Herbalism use all of it. And it's not just teas, it's also tinctures and wraps and, soaking yourself, bathing in herbs. There's a lot of different ways to use herbs. So that's the traditional, like ancient healing art. Now, naturopathy is more of an inclusive word to include other facets of holistic health and healing, which some of them have always been part of herbalism, such as fasting, getting enough sunshine and rest. It basically deals with everything that doesn't have to do with plants and herbs, right? So, and other things that are more modern, like, for example, orthomolecular nutrition that I mentioned, which is megadose vitamin therapy, high doses of specific vitamins to help you with whatever issues you may be facing. For example, vitamin C therapy and vitamin D therapy is a very important one in orthomolecular nutrition. And there's other more newer, more modern holistic health and healing methods that wouldn't fall under traditional historical herbalism, but they just all fall under the umbrella of naturopathy, such as also homeopathy and even essential oils. Essential oils weren't as common way back then, but certainly homeopathy, that is a very more modern healing art, even though it does use the same basic elements as herbalism does. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a very clear overview of what naturopathy is and what you do within that field. Okay, so Mayim, thank you for again explaining to us what that field is and how it actually benefits us. But I just want to dig deeper because you spend a lot of time, familiarizing yourself and gaining experience and expertise. So you could probably share to us what are some of the herbs that are good for our brain.
Yes, absolutely. So I just recently did a video on dementia, and I think there's a specific brain tonic formula that I mention, and I just like to go ahead and discuss some of the herbs in that formula. Okay, so first of all, ginkgo biloba leaf is really good for your brain, and it's also probably the most tested herb for improved brain function. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best; it's just the most tested. Researchers were probably trying to make a medicine out of it, which is why it's the most tested. But it was showing very promising results. So that's why testing continued for and continues to this day. So ginkgo biloba is a very powerful antioxidant, which means that it helps to reduce free radicals, which is very good for not only your brain but your whole entire body, just your health in general. And it also reduces inflammation and it also improves circulation, and all these things are good for your brain. And not only is it good for Alzheimer's and dementia, but there's also been research that has shown that it's good for other things like ADHD, depression, sleep, schizophrenia, a lot of things. There's a lot of research that has been done for ginkgo biloba, and not only things like that, but even things like low libido and things that even don't even have anything to do with your brain too much. So ginkgo biloba is a really, really good herb. My husband planted a ginkgo biloba tree, and so we get to enjoy it free, which is really nice. So it's something that you can take not just if you have issues, but you can take it as an herb for preventative measures. Just let it be one of your daily drinks. It's so much better than, drinking soda or whatever kind of junk people drink these days. Let's say, for example, if you're drinking soda, it's got all these chemicals that are really bad for you, and it will accelerate the aging process, right? Whereas if you take these good herbs that we're talking about today, it will protect your brain and it will slow down the aging process or the negative effects of the aging process. And so another herb that's in this brain tonic formula that I talk about is organic rosemary leaf and flower. And rosemary is traditionally known as the remembrance herb in herbalism. So rosemary is, a delicious herb to use in cooking, in Italian food, and even if it's not Italian, it's a really tasty herb. And then there's also kola nut. Now, kola nut, it might not be very much known for dementia or Alzheimer's in particular, but it's included. I think one of the reasons why. And I got this formula from Dr. Richard Schultz, and he's not a medical doctor; he's a herbalist and a naturopath. But he was one of my teachers when I was studying herbalism. Now, I believe that one of the reasons why he includes it in his formula is because of its caffeine content. Now, even though I don't know of much research with kola nut in particular as it pertains to brain function, however, there is a lot of research about caffeine and how caffeine improves brain function, and it can even be preventive against dementia and Alzheimer's. There's controversy about the healthfulness of caffeine. Certainly, if you have high blood pressure, that's something to consider. But caffeine can also be very helpful, and even coffee. Like coffee is very high in antioxidants itself. Also, now there's no coffee in the formula, but there's kola nut. And then another thing that is in his formula is hot peppers. He uses either habanero peppers or cayenne. Cayenne is more of the traditional pepper to use in herbal formulas. But either pepper is fine. And it's the heat factor, it's the capsicum inside the peppers that makes it so healing, because this heat is excellent for circulation. And that's one of the problems that we have, as we age, which is poor circulation. And this not only affects our brain, but a lot of our heart, and there's a lot of things that are affected when we have poor circulation. So now Tabasco, or these bottled hot sauces, they're not so good because they have all these additives that are harmful for you and your brain, excitotoxins, as neurosurgeon Dr. Russell Blaylock calls it. But when you have the whole herb, when you have real peppers, whether in powder form or fresh, it's very good for your circulation. It's very good for your brain. And then the last herb that I would like to mention is gotu kola. Even though it's not in Richard Schultz's brain tonic formula, it's also good for Alzheimer's and dementia. There's a lot of research based on that. So gotu kola, that's different from kola nut. I mentioned kola nut, and that's not the same as gotu kola. So I've got ginkgo biloba, rosemary leaf, kola nut, habanero pepper, and gotu kola. Now he puts the herbs in his formula in a tincture format, and tinctures are when you extract the active properties of the herbs in an alcoholic format. But personally, I prefer to take my herbs in tea formula, because you can get a lot more herbs from a cup of tea, and you don't want, I don't want a high alcohol content when I'm taking the herbs, because there's other side effects of alcohol. So I prefer taking it in herb formula. Now, hot peppers are kind of hard to take in herb formula, so I wouldn't put hot pepper inside my tea. I'd probably just do that for food, or I do use hot cayenne tea, in more emergency situations, if I think, because cayenne is very, very healing. So, anyways,
Yeah, that sounds really like healthy, health giving. And I like what you said, Mayim, that why do we actually have to resort to artificial products or artificial food when we can actually benefit from what nature is providing us? I just want to follow up on those herbs that you mentioned. What about vitamins and supplements? Can you name us some few of these which are actually good for the brain?
yes. And I'd like to, before I talk about the vitamins, I'd like to preface this by saying that these are good for your brain, but these vitamins are also good to protect yourself from possible dementia and problems before you go into surgery. And I mentioned my dementia video that I made earlier. I thought this would be a good time to bring it in more. So if you don't mind. So I made this video about dementia because I coach someone who is actually a medical doctor, and one of her family members recently had an operation, and I don't remember what the operation exactly was, but after the operation, all of a sudden he had dementia. And when the family asked the doctor about it, they were like, "Oh, it's just his brain is shrinking, and it's just, it's a natural thing." They didn't admit any kind of relationship or even possibility of the dementia being connected to the surgery, even though it was very obvious to the family that the dementia happened right after the surgery. He was perfectly fine before the surgery. And so she thought that that was very suspicious. And so at aruka.com, which is, my health coach certification and naturopathic herbalist school, where we teach people to become naturopathic herbalists such as myself, and also health coaches. One of the people that we study, of course, we study Richard Schultz, who's master herbalist. We also study several only holistic medical doctors. And one of them is Dr. Russell Blaylock. And he's not only a medical doctor, but he is also a neurosurgeon. So he has a lot of experience with brain diseases. And he brings out that POCD, post-operative cognitive disorder, is indeed something common. I mean, not that common where it happens to everyone, but there is this phenomenon of POCD, or dementia-like effects post surgery because of the anesthesia. Okay, most surgeons will either be unaware of this, or they'll deny it, or they won't want to make themselves aware of this. Okay, but he brings out that it is indeed a thing. And so he advises, and a list of vitamins that I'm about to read, it's good to take before surgery, but it's also good for your brain in general, and should be, can be taken, and should be taken actually, especially if you're getting older, on a regular basis. Okay, so first of all, antioxidants. And again, the antioxidants will combat free radicals, which means that it will combat the aging process in your body. And antioxidants such as B12, B6, folate, riboflavin, basically all the B vitamins, and also vitamin E and vitamin C. And these also reduce inflammation, vitamin D. And most people in the world today are deficient in vitamin D. And it's very important for your immune system and also your brain health. And, that's because of the sedentary indoor lifestyles that we are, a lot of the problems that we're facing, our ancestors did not face because they didn't live the kind of lives that we live. And they didn't eat the kinds of foods that we eat also. They didn't have all these chemicals that are so bad for our brains. And then another very important thing is DHA, which is DHA and omega 3s, primarily from fish oils. So this is something also that's very lacking. Not only is it lacking, but there needs to be a balance in our bodies between omega 3 fats and omega 6 fats. And DHA is from the omega 3. But the problem is most of the oil that we consume is omega 6 in nature. So most people would be benefited from an omega-3 supplement no matter what the age. And so, the natural source of that would be taking it from fish. But also, we just need to cut out all of the fast food that is mostly fried in bad oils, not omega-3 type oils, but the omega-6 bad oils. And so the fried foods, and not just fried foods, most of the packaged and processed foods. And when you cook, the best oil to cook with is coconut oil, not vegetable oil. That is one of the worst sources of omega-6. So coconut oil or avocado oil is very good to cook with. Also palm oil. Now, olive oil is also good, but it's not good to cook with. It's better to use raw, or if you're going to warm it up, just very low heat, because it has a very low smoking point, actually. The oils like coconut and avocado, they have a higher smoking point, which means that they'll not break down, and they're better for you in terms of cooking. So DHA, that's one of the supplements. Sorry, I got off on a tangent about cooking oils, but it's so important that people understand these things, and as it relates to the kind of foods that we eat. Okay. And then another supplement is N-Acetyl Cysteine, and that's good for so many things. So I also take N-Acetyl Cysteine from I have dry eye issues, and that's something that comes through menopause. And also, I probably don't drink enough, as much as I need to. And also, I'm breastfeeding. So N-Acetyl Cysteine is also good for the brain. And another really important thing that neurosurgeon Russell Blaylock recommends is magnesium. And also orthomolecular nutritionist Andrew Saul, and his a lot of his work is based on the two-time Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling and his work and research on orthomolecular medicine and nutrition. But so one of the things that they recommend are magnesium, and then Dr. Andrew Saul also recommends calcium. So Andrew Saul, he's not a medical doctor again, also. He is a PhD, a scientist. So magnesium is very important because, and calcium also, because they help to lessen the effects of heavy metal toxicity. And heavy metal toxicity, as neurosurgeon Russell Blaylock teaches, is one of the causes of dementia. It's one of the risk factors, it's one of the causes. And we are just bombarded with, very unnecessary, very unhealthy metals today. One of the major ones that Russell Blaylock mentions is mercury. And this would include thimerosal. It is a form of mercury, and it's one that is very common, and we get extremely high doses of because of immunization schedules today. And so this is also very bad for our brain. And there's a lot of research on the connection between various mental issues and mercury. Okay, so there's mercury, and people, they'll warn against fish consumption. They'll say, oh, there's too much, we shouldn't be consuming fish because of the mercury content. But actually, the amount of mercury that is found in shots in the immunization regimen that we have is just ridiculous. It's just like 1,000 times more than you would ever get from eating fish, even on a regular basis. And so people are afraid of eating fish, even though fish actually has very helpful omega-3 oils and DHA that is good for our brains. So it's really, really backwards. Mercury is one of them. Another one is that I think is a major problem is, and that Dr. Russell Blaylock teaches, is aluminum. A lot of people cook with aluminum pots and pans, but it's very toxic. It's very bad for your brain. And so when you take magnesium and calcium, it will help reduce the absorption of these toxic metals into your body. But you should also just stop using aluminum as much as possible. Our family uses aluminum only to cover the food, but I'll always make sure that the aluminum foil doesn't actually touch our food, especially when you're heating it up. And that's when the aluminum can leach into the food more if it's actually touching the food. Try to use aluminum as sparingly as possible, and certainly do not cook with aluminum pots and pans. That is one of the ways that we get heavy metal toxicity, which is very bad and can cause dementia and Alzheimer's. So yeah, I hope that
Mayim,
wasn't too long of an answer.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for giving us a very comprehensive outline of vitamins and supplements that are actually beneficial for a brain. And I just want to touch upon what you said, because you mentioned about this video that you've created for dementia, and I'll actually, for the benefit of everyone who's watching this, I'll pop in the link to that video. So for anyone who wants to learn more about that video, they can watch it at their convenience. But on the subject of dementia, what would you say is, what else is good for dementia?
Yeah, that's good, because it's not just the vitamins and the herbs. There's a lot of things that we have to do also. So one of the things, actually, Dr. Russell Blaylock, he talks about the connection between insulin resistance and memory function, or dementia, dementia. So another thing that's really important is that we do things that don't upset that. So reducing sugar is not just good for your teeth and your immune system and your weight, but it's also good for your brain. Another thing is that we really need to avoid stress and attend to spiritual health. I mean, it's very, it's not hard to understand that when we're in stressful situations, our brain doesn't function, as well as it can. So reducing stress is really, really huge. And also doing things that challenge your brain. And this is a challenge, especially for senior citizens, when they retire. One of the dangers is that senior citizens do nothing. And this is really dangerous for your brain and also for your body. My father, he just, when he retired, he just played solitaire on his computer, all day long. This is really not good for his health. He had a sharp mind, so for him it didn't affect his mind very much, but it did affect his health to just. So we should be staying active always. It's good for our bodies and it's good for our brain, and we should also be learning. So herbalist Dr. John R. Christopher, again, he's not a medical doctor, he's an herbalist. Well, he recommended gardening as an activity. So there's a lot of great benefits to gardening. Not only are you active, it's also not too strenuous, but you're also getting the vitamin D. And vitamin D was one of the vitamins that I told you that neurosurgeon Russell Blaylock recommended. Well, the best way to get vitamin D is naturally through absorbing sunshine. Going outside and gardening, you get the vitamin D. You also get the benefits of fresh air. It's also a stress reliever, to be out there in beautiful nature. And it also stimulates your brain because when you're gardening, you're thinking about, what am I going to grow? Where's the best spot to put this? Oh, it's not doing so good today. What can I do to improve it? What does my plant need? Does it need more sunshine? Does it need more water? Does it need some fertilizer? And so there's a lot of, creativity and thought that goes into gardening. So that's one thing that he suggested. Another thing is, just like learning a language is also a very good thing. So it can't be something that is rote. It can't be something habitual that you do. It has to be something that takes thought. And Russell Blaylock, he talks about how these kinds of activities are very good for your brain. But another thing that he also talks about is the dangers of tattooing, and it's a fad, but there's a lot of not only heavy metal poisoning, but also other toxins that go into tattoos. So it's just another factor that if you get tattoos. I don't want to say, I'm not trying to be religious or anything, but it is, one of the things that can contribute to dementia and to poor brain function.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing those thoughts with us, Mayim. But we'll move on to your other roles, because I understand that aside from being a naturopathic herbalist, you're also a life coach. So, of course, as a life coach, just like being in the sector of recovery, there's so many approach. So, tell us, what's your approach like?
Okay, well, I have a story about this, as I want to talk about this through a story. One of the people that I learned life coaching from is her name is Brooke Castillo, and she is the founder of the Life Coach School. And in her video series, she talks about how she wanted to become someone who helps people through their problems, and she thought the answer to that was to become a psychotherapist. So she went to school to become a psychotherapist, and she realized that that's not what she wanted to do because in her studies, she just learned about things that were very depressing and things that didn't really give a lot of answers. And she talked about how, because of school, she started needing psychotherapy herself. And when she started seeing a therapist, the therapist would make her just rehash her problems and talk about her problems over and over and over and over again. And that she just continued to become depressed, more and more depressed. And finally, she was like, "This is not what I want to do. I don't want to do what this my therapist does for a living, and it's not helping me at all. It's not helping me to conquer my issues. It's not helping me to get out of my depression. It's making me more depressed." A lot of people can attest to this. And then, she didn't know anything about, what in the world is a life coach, but so she quit. I think she gave up that career path, and she went into the corporate world. And then one day she heard, I think it was like a life coach speaking on TV. I think it was the Oprah show or something like that. And this person was talking about, what a life coach does. And she was like, "Yes, that is what I want to do. I want to be a life coach." And then she became basically the founder of one of the biggest life coach schools that we have today. And so part of the things that we teach at Aruka.com, one of the modules that we teach is about life and health coaching because it's such an important part, mental health in general. And I believe life coaching is the best vehicle for improving mental health. I'm not saying that there's not a place for psychotherapists and stuff like that, but what I'm saying is that for her and also for me, what helped to increase my joy and help me to achieve the goals in my life was coaching and learning how to have the right kind of mindset to achieve your goals. And that's what life coaches do. They help people to cultivate the right mindset that they need in order to achieve their goals, whether their goals be in the field of health or wealth or relationships. It doesn't matter. And that doesn't mean that the life coach has all the answers. You don't have to be a doctor and a psychotherapist or a business major to help people with these things, because the answers are within us and they're freely available usually in the world. So a coach is more like a guide to help you think through, because the answers, your mind is so powerful, and you can arrive to the right kind of answers with guidance. One of the things that I think is very valuable with therapy, but life coaches do too, is that therapists listen to you. And especially in our day and age, when people are so busy, a lot of times we don't have someone who is wise, or who has our best interests at heart, to just listen to us. And sometimes we can even find all the answers to our problems. We have to take the time to think it through, and having a good ear to listen to you can be extremely powerful. And then, of course, there's also, I believe, I like going to coaches who have achieved what I want to achieve. So for me, I don't see the benefit of seeking marriage counseling from someone who has been divorced a million times. You know what I mean? I want to seek marriage counseling from people who have successful marriages. I'm not saying that people can't be divorced maybe once, but if they're going, every few years regularly as a pattern, going from one spouse to another, I really don't want that. That doesn't make sense to me, to be learning how to have a good marriage from someone like that. You know what I mean? So actually, my husband and I, we do marriage coaching for people. We're not licensed counselors, but people go to us because they see that we have a good marriage. And and our faith plays into that a lot. People trust us because they understand our faith. We're leaders in a spiritual community. So yeah, a life coach is basically someone that helps you achieve your goals, no matter what they are. And for someone, for example, when I was talking about the medical doctor who wanted to learn about dementia, if it's her goal to learn about dementia, I don't have to be the expert. I don't have to be a psychotherapist. I can point her to the right resources and to the right healers that I know, who are holistic minded and can provide those answers for her. Just being resourceful as a life coach is very important. You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to help your client find the answers.
Absolutely. Well, Mayim, you mentioned to us about your platform, Aruka. Again, I'll pop the link to the description notes so anyone can visit the website. But you mentioned that you're using this platform to equip students on how to, become a more effective life coach. But I was just wondering, are there any sort of qualifications for them to attend to Aruka? I was, alluding to whether you're expecting them to have like a background in counseling or sort of background with life experiences. Do you expect them to have that?
No, not at all. So yeah,
Mm.
at aruka.com, we teach mostly naturopathic herbalism, but also the life coaching and also online business and marketing. And when I designed the program, I designed it for someone like me back in 2003, or before I myself began studying naturopathy and herbalism. I designed it for someone like me, someone with no medical background, no health background, but someone who was just basically just was sick and tired of the failing modern medical system, and they wanted real answers, and they were not getting it from the system. I have students that have no medical background at all whatsoever, but I also have students that are nurses or medical technicians, and even doctors are learning from me. So no health or medical background is necessary, but we do have students that do have a health or medical background.
I understand that aside from the kind of formal training, if you will, that you provide your students, there are also free resources that people could look at your website. So tell us about these free resources that people can find on your website.
Yeah, I think one very important one is the search engine that we built, that our team built. And it's at search.aruka.com. So it's search, the word search, .aruka, and that's ARUKAH. There's an H at the end, .com. And so the reason why we built this search engine is because Google will not serve the holistic websites that I trust. They ban them, or they block them, or they downgrade them. And unfortunately, the pharmaceutical companies, they are tied not only to the government but to the major internet service providers, search engines and whatnot, Facebook, Google, etc. So that's why we created our own search engine so that we could search information from websites that were not influenced by big pharma, by pharmaceutical corporations, that were truly holistic and were not afraid and did not cater or serve big pharma. So I use it myself, and my students use it, and it's freely available for use to anyone. So that's search.aruka.com. Okay, and then the other resource, there is one more resource, a new one. It's basically just a short online email mini course about how to become a holistic healer. And in that short mini course, I send a new lesson I think it's every few days or so. It's about my journey of how I became a holistic healer and what the steps are, just in an overview, not very in depth, but just an overview of how to become a holistic healer, what kind of steps need to be taken.
Well, I've got to congratulate you for making such, platform, a search engine, but in particular, because I would imagine that took a lot of resources and that took a lot of time to create a search engine. But again, I suppose that's what you have to pay for if you want to really disseminate information that you're really passionate about. So yeah, thank you for creating such a platform. Well, thank you for sharing those information to us, Mayim. Now, I would imagine because you have acquired a lot of experience in your chosen field. So if you could just identify some misconceptions within your field and kind of address them.
Yes, absolutely. So I think one misconception, especially about, what I do, especially because it's in the health field, is that you have to be a licensed physician in order to become a holistic healer. And that's actually not true. You do have to have a license to use the title naturopath. So we don't use the title naturopath. I use the title naturopathic herbalist. But even then, the license is only required in certain states. So, for example, in Texas, that title is not protected. But even though it doesn't matter, you can still be a holistic healer with the health coaching model. For example, anyone can write a book, right? You don't have to have a medical degree to write a book, right? And so likewise, anyone can create a video about a health topic. There's nothing illegal about that. And so, what a health coach does is a health coach educates and inspires and supports people on their health and healing journey. I always tell my students, and I call them students because it's an educational relationship, that I cannot tell you to do anything, because I'm not a medical doctor. And I'll even refer them to a holistic medical doctor who I think will take good care of them. But even a holistic medical doctor can only do so much because, you go in to visit them, and a holistic medical doctor will charge maybe, $150 to $1,000 for, your first visit. And it's very expensive, but there's a lot of learning that you can do that will complement your visit to a holistic medical doctor. And that can be provided by a health coach. So, health coaches will create programs that are educational in nature. There's one that I recommended to one of my clients not too long ago called Chris Beats Cancer. Now, Chris beat cancer. He had cancer and he took charge of his own health, and he used various holistic methods to heal himself. And because of his experience, he has helped thousands of others as well. He has his book, and he also has a coaching program where he has various video modules where he tells people about all the research that he made in order to heal himself and his experience with it, so that others can do it. And a big part of his coaching program also is encouraging people to not be afraid and to avoid common pitfalls that people might face if they're trying to heal themselves. So you can't be a doctor without a degree, but you can educate and inspire and support people as a health coach. And that's exactly what health coaches do. That's what we teach people. And actually, it's a very lucrative model. It's so lucrative that even medical doctors want to become health coaches. There are a lot of medical doctors who transition into health coaching because it can be more profitable if you do it the right way. And also it allows for the financial time and location freedom that having an online business especially can have. So, for example, there's two medical doctors in one of my groups. They're transitioning from an office model where they actually see patients to a coaching model where they're providing information online and then supporting their clients through live group calls. And that's a very common health coaching model. A lot of medical doctors, if you don't know, they're very overworked. And sometimes I've heard, medical doctors are saying, I wanted to get into this profession to help people, but the way that hospitals are set up, it's like a factory. Like with my experience that I just shared, I was only to see my doctor for 15 minutes. And so there are a lot of doctors who are also getting tired of the modern medical system, and they're becoming health coaches because they're seeing that, in order to really help people attain holistic health and not just drug them up, which will cause side effects, which will require another drug, and so on and so forth. You really have to teach people and educate people and inspire people to holistic health and healing.
Well, thank you for those brilliant advice, Mayim. Now, finally, the floor is all yours. Tell us what else is in the pipeline, and if people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at?
Yes, absolutely. So I do have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Aruka, and I publish videos. And of course, we have our school, and you can learn more about how to become the healer of your home and your community and build a profitable online health coaching business, just like I have. You can do the same. You can heal yourself, you can heal your family, and you can even build a business out of this kind of this field, this information, because of course people want to be healthy, and of course people want to heal themselves. So if you are interested, we are looking for people who are holistic minded and are open, and whether or not you have a medical background or not, it doesn't matter. You just have to want to have the passion to heal people and want to become a holistic healer. And so if you'd like to do that, I invite you to check out our website at aruka.com. That's ARUKAH.com. And sign up for our free class too, to learn more about how to become a holistic healer.
Absolutely. Well, Mayim Vega, it's a pleasure having you here on the DRH show, but unfortunately, time is against us. I look forward to hearing more about your work.
Okay, thank you so much. It was so fun doing this.